Hey everybody, Tony D here, Little Jones asleep on the couch, and this is a screenwriter's take on the Many Saints of Newark. Now, I just rewatched my trailer, so let me run down all my mistakes. First big mistake I made, I was looking through the Wikipedia entry, and it said that Dickie Masante uh, uh, died, and I looked, and it said 2004. That was the year of the entry, not the year in the show. The actual year was in the 70s, so I messed that up. I also referred to it as a TV show. I was pretty sure it was a movie. I don't know why I said that, but I messed that up. And the corruption narrative wasn't in it as predicted. Um, Not really. It was kind of like a backwards version of that, which I think hurt the movie, and I'm going to explain why. But first, smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books. Links in the description. If you check out my books over at Amazon.com, you'll also see that I wrote Complete Mafia for D20, as well as Complete Mafia West Coast for D20, if you're interested in some role playing games about the Mafia. And also, FU I'm Italian, Why We Italians Are Awesome, which also does have some Mafia stuff in it. Not that the Mafia exists. Anyhow, so the non-spoiler review. It's the one thing I nailed in this trailer analysis is the movie is overproduced, in my view. It luxuriates in set pieces, and you could easily cut 20, 30 minutes out of this movie. It would be much tighter. That all being said, it doesn't really build to much, in my view. It's it could have been a lot tighter. There's a little too much going on. It is fun to see the characters from the TV show, their younger versions, and they kind of spread them out a little bit, and they get actors who are pretty close. Younger versions of these guys. The casting's great. The sets are amazing. The direction, the acting. I mean, everything in it is top notch. It's just the script's not all that great. I don't find it very realistic, knowing what I know about the Mafia at that time. Now, you could argue, well, this is Sopranos. They made a bunch of stuff up. True. But I found it a bit unrealistic, ultimately. And I can't really explain it without getting into the spoilers. So, I think fans of The Sopranos will find it entertaining. I don't think you'll be raving about it, but maybe. It just it's kind of slow paced. It doesn't. It feels a little bit like the later episodes of the TV show in that it's kind of just an awkward ending. It doesn't feel like it builds to something, which is weird because part of my analysis in the trailer was that it was the Sopranos TV show was becoming too much like, it was becoming a victim of its own success. It was becoming too big. And because of that, when Mafia stuff gets big, they go right to this epic sort of Godfather-y type tone. Now, the movie stayed away from that, which was good, but I see problems in this, in my view. I know. It's probably not going to be a popular opinion. People will love this movie. I don't know. But let's get into it. So now we're into the spoilers. So if you're seeing the movie, don't watch this part because I'm going to talk what happened in the movie. First off, there's Michael Gandolfini. Does he do well? He's only in about half the movie. He does all right. I mean, he's not blowing my doors off, but he definitely comports himself well. The movie's really about Dickie. And Dickie's character is this good-hearted mafia guy. And he's way too good to be in the Mafia, in my view. He's just way too good. Way too nice. My reading of the Mafia is you got to be way more ruthless than Dickie is portrayed in this movie to be in the Mafia. Way more ruthless. There's almost, I can't even think really of too many ruthless scenes. And Dickie kind of, even in the one scene where they put that guy down on a table and kind of torture him, Dickie's not doing it. And he doesn't get his hands dirty, and he doesn't particularly revel in it. Um, you know, and the people he ends up murdering, he's kind of justified in doing it to a certain degree. But the biggest thing that's unrealistic in terms of the mafia, in my view, is that you would have this black gangster who Dickie knows run roughshod over the mafia at this time period. You have to understand that the 60s and 70s were the peak of the mafia. Okay? These guys were at the peak of their power. They had just come off, I mean, maybe you could argue the 50s was really the peak, but they came off of Prohibition with millions of dollars. They put it into Teamsters in Las Vegas and all these things. They made even more money. It was insane during that time what the mafia controlled. So maybe you could argue the peak was in the 50s, but really the 60s and 70s, they were still doing very well. There wasn't, the black gangs, they were a factor, but against the mafia, they were still very disciplined then. This is, Rico hurt them, and they started getting guys turning, but it wasn't really to the 80s that things really ramped up and the mafia was like decimated. So they held quite a bit of power during this time. I find it very difficult to believe that the character of Harold would have lasted. After he kills his first mob guy, I thought, oh, okay, well, they're going to kill him tomorrow, the next day. And that he survives? I'm like, what? That he survives all the way to the end of the movie? I mean, that's just crazy. There's no way these mafia guys would have let him live. No way. They knew who he was. Dickie knew exactly who he was, where he lived, most likely, all his associates. They would have torn apart Newark to get this guy. And in fact, the movie sort of hints at those rules, right? I mean, Ray Liotta's second character is in jail and nobody visits him, and he's doing the full bid because he killed a made guy. And he's ostracized from the family, which is a big deal, by the way. And they probably would have just killed Ray Liotta too, if truth be known. He was an odd character. It was an odd thing to have that, and it felt very disconnecting. It's not a good choice in my view to have two characters that don't know each other very well. In a movie like this, a lot of times the mafia movies, the great thing about them is there's such a history between the characters. There was no history between them. They were getting to know each other. There were some details there, but they didn't have a history. They didn't know each other because Dickie's father had forbid him to go visit his brother. So I found that second part of Ray Liotta's character completely. The first part with Ray Liotta is like, mob boss who beats his wife. I mean, that was pretty standard, but not that they all did that, but in the movies, that was sort of standard. Brings a young bride, and she's she's miserable, and he can't really please her. I tell you what, the other thing, which was suicide too, that girl cheating on Dickie, okay, with a black guy. The mafia guys were not progressive at all, especially during this era. Okay, from what I've read and seen, they would not have tolerated that. They would have killed a lot of people to make sure that didn't happen. Now, Dickie does kill her, which made sense, but that he didn't kill that guy, that he didn't go right out and kill him. Am I watching a mob movie or what? Dickie was just too nice. He was just way too nice. You got a mafia guy crying? Nah, sorry. Nah. Dickie, why was Dickie even in the gang? Why did he hold such power within the family? These guys have to earn. And Junior's behavior? Nah. I don't remember if that was established in the show or not, but Um, you know, I mean, it's an addendum to The Sopranos. It's okay, but again, it just luxuriates in all these scenes. You know, all the race riot stuff. That sort of seems like it's going somewhere, but it really feels like it belongs in another movie. It has nothing, almost nothing to do with Tony Soprano and Dickie. I mean, they're sort of in the city when it happens. The mob guys see it, but like, what is that? How does that change things? Okay, and I'm not talking about the world. I'm talking about the movie. I'm talking about the characters you're watching. How does that change Dickie? Dickie goes to, oh, there's a riot. Oh, they thought we killed a guy, but we only beat him up, and the riot got out of control. The only thing that explains is why Dickie is able to burn his father's body and get away with it. It's the only thing it explains, right? So, great. I mean, I get it. That was fine. But we didn't need to see all those scenes. We didn't need to see all these scenes with Harold. They're just superfluous. Harold is superfluous for the most part. Okay, he's a character that Dickie hires, but really we need to find out more about Dickie and his motivations and how he even got to the position he's in. Now, normally in a mob movie, they'll have at least one scene where they'll show you how capable Dickie is and why he is who he is. Right? So maybe, I don't know, they steal stuff or they kill a guy or whatever. They don't really show you that with Dickie. Dickie's, through the whole movie, is obsessed with being nice and doing good deeds. This is not how mafia guys normally operate in the movies. These guys are pretty ruthless operators. You don't mess with them. Dickie did not act like a guy you mess with. I mean, the only guy he loses his top on is his father. Which, I mean, that's a big deal. That Dickie kills his own father, who's also a made guy, that's a huge effing deal. And he just blames it on the riot? No. So, I mean, Ray Liotta, as his brother, calls it out a little bit and says, "You mean to tell me, he went down there to board up his own business?" I assume he was a boss. He was at least a made guy, right? I mean, they didn't say he was a boss, but I just assumed he was. He seemed like he was charged. I guess John Soprano was in charge, played by Shane from Walking Dead, which was a weird casting choice. I guess they wanted to get more of a name in the movie. I mean, he was all right. Wasn't the same actor they used in The Sopranos, but whatever. It just didn't ring true, And I'm going to pause this because I don't want to go past my review. It's just, and again, these set pieces must have cost them an S ton of money. An S ton, And it was fun to see Silvio and Paulie and Big Pussy and Carmela as their younger selves, but, this movie has a lot of Michael Gandolfini in the trailer, along with Dickie. And it's, he's not in the movie all that much, really. In fact, they have a second actor playing him as a slightly younger version, only because they need to do the Newark riot, because that was part of the story. Like, we barely needed to see Tony to further the narrative with Dickie. And that's part of the problem with the movie, too. It dithers between the narrative with Dickie and the narrative with Tony. And the narrative with Tony isn't that strong. It's just not. Dickie kind of doesn't corrupt him. If anything, Tony's corrupting him. Because Tony is relentlessly sort of bad. I didn't really get the whole ice cream scene. Tony and his buddies steal an ice cream truck, a Mr. Softee truck, which is a real ice cream truck franchise here, by the way, in New Jersey. And just gives away the ice cream. Like, it made sense when he got caught running numbers in the school. That was kind of funny, and that made sense. But then he just steals an ice cream truck just to give away the ice cream? He didn't get any money. Why did he do it? Just to be a jerk? Or just to be fun? I guess. I don't really get that. It isn't what I wanted to see personally at a Sopranos sequel. I wanted to see how Tony became who he was, and instead, like, we need another movie at least. Instead, it's all about Dickie, and Dickie's, for my money, is not a very good character. It's weird that they have Chris narrate part of it in the beginning, and then, you know, they have this weird sweeping shot in the open. It was kind of unnerving, you know, all the various dead people talking, and then suddenly they go past Chris's grave, and then he starts talking, and you realize you're in the present, I guess. And then suddenly it cuts to the boat. Odd choice. So it again, it feels too important, and we didn't really learn anything, in my view. We didn't learn anything. Where was the moment Tony changed? Like, for a moment I thought, oh, when he takes the speakers, that's the moment he gets corrupted by Dickie. No, it's really, I guess, about Tony's friendship with Dickie and how it falls apart because Dickie sacrifices their friendship not to, you know, corrupt him. But, you know, the one thing Mafia guys are great at is reading people. They read people. They size you up in a matter of seconds. They're amazing. And they have to. This is what they do. They size people up. You mean to tell me a guy who's a made guy in this organization, high up, like Dickie, can't size people up, even his own nephew? He would size him up in a second. Okay? He would know. He would know his nephew is a bad egg, if that's what they were pushing, which they kind of were, that he was just going to fall into this business anyway. And I didn't quite understand where Tony's father came in on this. He was just not around. Now, granted, he was in jail for part of it, and then he gets out, but, like, what is he doing all this time? Like, he's not in the movie much either. It's all about Dickie doing the same stupid mob stuff we've seen. And on the one hand, he's super nice and trying to do nice by people. On the other hand, you know, he's got a mistress, and then he says he can't have a kid with his wife, and then suddenly he has one. Did he have it? At first I thought, oh, he must have had a kid with a mistress, and they adopted him, and that's his deal. I mean, there's just so many things that fly in the face of normal mob stuff. Now you could say, well, it's different. They're trying to do a different take. Okay. But, you know, if I do a movie about a detective and he spends the whole movie writing a book, did I even do a detective movie? You see what I'm saying? So, Dickie he was too gullible to be one of these guys. He just was. He was too nice. He was too gullible. He's handing out money left and right to a guy. He handed out money to Harold in the scene after Harold already took out one of his guys. These guys would have known instantly who did it. They wouldn't have arrested until they found out who did it and who took their money. They just don't. They're all about their money. They can't allow that to happen. Once they allow that to happen once, it's going to keep happening. People will get robbed. You can't. This isn't like a regular job for these guys. They don't just do things. They react. That's the whole point of doing mafia movies. These guys react very strongly. They're extremely passionate, I'll say, about everything. And you don't mess with them. You don't mess with them. There's no way this guy should have lived. No way. They would have torn apart Newark to get him. So, I don't know what this movie is. It just felt like they were so caught up in doing all these other scenes. I mean, they have a scene where the black gangster has come back, and then he's sitting in like a, I don't know what you'd call it. It was like a black church group, and I guess they were Black Panthers giving a presentation. Okay, what does that have to do with the mafia? I thought, oh, maybe, and there was a gunfight between the black gangsters and the mob guys, but it didn't make any sense. In the end, Harold lets Dickie live. Like, okay, like you showed up to kill Dickie. He takes a shot to kill you, and then you go, all right, I'm just going to let you live. Just because the sirens came. So what? This guy shot a guy dead in an army recruitment office. Doesn't make any sense. He wouldn't have stopped. He would have kicked in the door and finished off Dickie. Dickie had shot. He had a double-barreled shotgun. He shot both barrels through the door and missed. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it had to all drive to him getting killed with the TV trays, because they mentioned that on the show. It wasn't a shock. I just was like, I was just, okay, the movie's over? Like, what's going to happen next? Like, I thought maybe Tony would avenge him in some way. I knew he wasn't going to avenge him, like, go out and kill a guy, but I thought maybe he'd do something. And, the whole bit with his mother trying to get her drugs because she's bipolar or whatever she is, that didn't ring true either. Like, I get it. Oh, you wanted to show Tony trying to help his mom. That just makes him less of a gangster. Okay? Like, a gangster would be like, I got to put some... He would put any drugs in her coffee just to shut her up, just to get her to stop bothering him. Like, that would have been like a baller move, right? Tony just goes I can't get the drugs, but, and they start that process only to, the payoff is, oh, well, when they found him, he had some of the drugs on him, when they found him dead. And it's like, Mrs. Soprano's like, oh, you never know people, right? Like, she immediately blames him, which was a Mrs. Soprano move, but it wasn't a big revelation. And, the final shot, and that's it. No, I'm sorry. Maybe it's going to be an unpopular opinion, but this movie was too luxurious. It needed a better script. I don't like it. I don't think it's realistic. I think it's too caught up in images, of that time period, of messaging. I think a little bit. I think there's a little bit of messaging in here. This whole idea of like, oh, black people are moving into the suburbs. Like, yeah, that was a thing. So what? That's not a movie. Okay? That's not a movie. I mean, I'm glad you acknowledged it, I guess. That was something that was happening in the time period. But there was a lot of that in the movie that, okay, and what are you trying to say? Well, Dickie was a nice guy, and, he gave Harold every chance in the world. Yeah, it got him killed, basically. There's no way that character Harold should have lived. I don't know if they did that because they're like, well, we're making a movie here, and this is 2021, and we want the black guy to live. Like, that's not a Mafia movie. Quite frankly, that character would have been a very secondary character in the movie. Yeah, they would have associates do their dirty work, but they wouldn't be like a main character. Harold's story was not important to Dickie's story. Not really. He didn't kill him. So, what? They didn't really mirror each other. Like, maybe if they mirrored each other, like, okay, like Dickie isn't as ruthless, and now you have Harold's character. I think his name was Harold, right? I want to say Harold for some reason. His character was more ruthless, and he learned from Dickie and saw Dickie's mistakes. That could work. But that's not what happened in the movie. It just... I'm sorry. I would not recommend this movie. Um, it just, as an addendum to The Sopranos, okay. If you're a Sopranos nut, you'll probably go, oh, it's cool to see the characters young, and I thought that was cool, but that's about it, man. The movie just doesn't have a driving narrative. Nicky's not driving this thing home. He's just there, being an ineffective mob guy. Anyhow, that's my take, such that it is. All right, I'm going to call it here. Check us out on Bitchute and Rumble. See you in the next one.